Good evening. My name is Rabbi Yitzchak Techtel with Chabad of Nashville. We'd like to welcome you here this evening. Thank you all for coming for this very special evening. Got to go far to see the people the other end of this Red Sea. This looks like the sea is about to split. This is a miraculous evening to have so many of you here. So I'd like to, at this point, ask you all, even though in Judaism everything we do is facing east, where the Torah is, facing to Jerusalem, but at this point, I would like to ask you all to turn to the north as we welcome our dear guest of honor, Joe Alexander. You may be seated. Chabad of Nashville has been hosting a Holocaust event for the last 6 years, beginning with Anne Frank's half-sister when we hosted this in the Music City Center. Since then, every year we've been hosting another one of our dwindling Holocaust survivors. And this is a very special opportunity that we have, because I can tell you that about 85% of the people in this room are friends of the Jewish community, not of the Jewish faith. And we are honored that you are here tonight to show us your support for the people of Israel, for the land of Israel. As God says in the book of Genesis in chapter 13, I will bless those that bless you, and the nations and the people of the world will be blessed through you. So we, as the Jewish community, thank you all for coming, and may you be blessed, and the people of Israel be blessed, that the one who dwells above and shines his countenance in the heavenly spheres, may he shine his countenance upon you all, and we say amen. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce you to our moderator of this evening, an author, a photographer, a writer, and someone who's a big supporter of the people of Israel, the state of Israel, the land of Israel. We'll be going back next week. Mrs. Alyssa Rosenheck, who's going to moderate this evening. Please give her a round of applause.
It's overwhelming to see all the beautiful faces and be in community tonight. It's truly a special night. We have the honor to hear from an extraordinary human being, a Holocaust survivor, Joe Alexander. He's 101 years old. Yes.
Thank you.
Most importantly, he's a survivor. He survived 12 concentration camps, including Auschwitz, Birkenau, Dachau, and the Death March. It's really important to bear witness to Holocaust survivor stories and invest in Holocaust education, especially during this climate when anti-Semitism is surging throughout the United States and globally. And we're faced with alarming statistics with 1 in 5 young American minds believe that the Holocaust was a myth. So I want to ask us for a few things in this room tonight. I want us to listen to Joe's story of resilience and hope and strength, and let that inspire our hearts to be expanded and broken open just a little bit more. I also want us to take his story and have it inspire a deeper sense of responsibility, not just to ourselves and not just to our families, but to one another. Look around this room, to our community. Because without responsibility, we don't have freedom and we don't have peace. And so, without further ado, I want to turn it over to an extraordinary human being and a survivor, Joe Alexander.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Thank everybody for being here tonight. Well, my name is Joe Alexander. I'm a Holocaust survivor from Poland. And I survived 12 camps. I come from a small town in Poland. My father was in business, and we had a very good life until 1939, when the Germans came into Poland. They divided Poland in two halves. One half was annexed to the Third Reich. The other half was Poland under German occupation. We lived on the part where it was annexed to the Third Reich. And I guess some of you maybe know that Europe, every town has a town square. In the town square, that's where most of the business are. We lived in the second house, one of the corners of the square, and the third house was an uncle of mine. After a few weeks, the Germans came to town and passed my uncle and went around the square and told the people they have 10 minutes to get their possessions and get out in the middle of the square, and they took them away. For some reason, I'll never know why, they left the 3 houses where we were the second house. Then the rumor started that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. So my father had 3 sisters living 25 kilometers before Warsaw, which was the second half of Poland. So my dad said he's not going to wait for them to give us 10 minutes. So he got out and he rented. We had deep horse-drawn wagons, about 6-8 feet deep, and packed up stuff from the store and put a few pieces of bedding on top and a couple of pieces of furniture, because from our part to the other part, they had to go through a border so that they're moving. So my parents and 1 sister and brother, and they left. I remained with 2 other sisters, and we were loading up a second wagon. In the meantime, Polish people from around town were coming to town to buy anything they can get, because they took the business people out, afraid, so whatever they can get to buy. I saw them in a bicycle and a boat of shirt material. On the way home, he passed the police station, and they got stopped. They want to know where did he get that material. They thought maybe people started to loot again before he took the business people out. So he said, I bought it, then show me a receipt. He said, I don't have a receipt. Then go bring the person who sold it to you. So he came back to me and said, you have to come with me, if not, they're going to come here. So I went with him to the police station. He asked me, did you sell him that? I said, yes. Why didn't you give him a receipt? I said, we in Poland, we didn't give receipts. So he took the boat of material, smacked the guy, let him go, and let me go. And I went back. My sister waited for me, and we took off with the second wagon. And we came to a little town named Bologna, about 25 kilometers before Warsaw. So we come there, life was going on still almost normal. People were still in business, but everybody had to go to work. So being there for about 2 weeks, I went to my first camp in 1939. I went to a camp where we were building a canal, and you stayed in the water up to the knee without boats, and that was October, November. But this was a camp where you worked during the week. On the weekend, you could go home. So I was working there for about 5 weeks, and I got blood poisoning. I was sores on my arms, on my legs. So I went home 1 week, and I said, I'm not going back. So Monday morning, the police came to look for me. So my dad said, he's not here. He's supposed to be in the camp. So I stayed away from home for a while. And that was the time when they started to build in Warsaw. They started to build a wall where the Warsaw ghetto was going to be. So after they finished building the wall, they came out and ordered all the Jews who live within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Warsaw had to move into the ghetto. So we moved into the ghetto. The life in the ghetto, you can't imagine how miserable, how terrible it was. You walked out in the morning, there were dead people on the streets, on the sidewalks, everywhere. Because the area they picked out for the ghetto was a small area, and they put in over 400,000 people. So I lived in the ghetto for about 6 months, and we found out back home nothing has changed. Everything remained since we left. So my parents decided, for an older sister, a younger brother, and I, we should go back home. So back home, you have to get out of the ghetto, so we paid off the guards at the gate, and we got out. We got out, so I decided, my sister and brother said they'll take one street, I'll take another street, and we walked through town. We meet on the outskirts of town. I walked for about 3 blocks, and I had a Polish teenager comes over and said, "Give me some money, I'm going to report you." So I figured I gave him some money, and I got rid of him, and I kept walking. He got on the streetcar, rode the streetcar for a few blocks, and comes over again, "Give me some more money." So this time I gave him some more money, but I changed the street, and I lost him. I walked to the outskirts of town. I met my sister and brother, and we went home. So as we came back, nothing was changed since we left. So I was there for 3 days. They came out to order all the Jewish men from 16 to 60 report to the schoolhouse. So I was free for 3 days. So I reported to the schoolhouse, and off I went to the camps. The first camp I went to, we were building a dam. We were cutting down hills, and we had little electric cars. You fill them up, and they take them another place, and they dump it. So the work we were doing was very hard work. We had to use picks to loosen up the ground. And the food you were getting was a piece of bread like this in the morning, and a cup of coffee, and you went to work. You came back from work, you got a soup. It was either from the peels of potatoes or spinach. Doing that kind of work, you couldn't survive. The only way you could survive is because we worked with civilians. This was civilian people. They came to work in the morning, and after work, they went home. So if you can manage to get a little extra food, that's the only way you could survive. So people were dying. This first camp I was, there were very few people left. Every morning they took dead people out. And we were in the city of Poznan. There were camps in the city and around the city. Same thing happened at other camps. So they combined 2, 3 camps into one. So after this camp, I was moved to another camp, and I was laying cobblestones on the streets. That lasted a few weeks. Then I moved to another camp. We were building sewers with cement pipes underground. After that, I went to a camp. I was a roofer. All these camps didn't last too long. Then I moved to another camp. We were building an airport. I was laying railroad tracks. After being in 7 camps, a train arrived, and it wasn't a passenger train, you know, the cattle car train, where they put 30, 40 people into one boxcar. And the destination we were going takes 5 or 6 hours at the most. But we were riding around for 3 days, no food, no water, no facilities. And we arrived in Auschwitz. Came to Auschwitz, they opened the door from the train. 30, 40% of people were dead on the train already. Whoever could walk, you walked out. You were lined up in rows of 5, and we met Dr. Joseph Mengele. He was called the Doctor of Death. He selected people for human experiments or to the gas chamber. So Dr. Mengele said there are 6 kilometers to walk to the camp. He's going to select people to go to the left. People on the left are going to be taken on trucks. So he went through and picked out sick people, old people, young kids. I was a young kid. So take me to go to the left. But if I would come from home, I wouldn't know the difference. But I was already in 7 camps. In every camp I was, had to go to work. I was trying to get in with the biggest, strongest man. And here I looked around, I see sick people, old people, young kids. That's not the people I like to be with. But my luck was, it was after midnight. It was the daytime. I don't think I could have done it. So when Dr. Mengele moved further down, I ran back to the other side. If I didn't run back to the other side, I wouldn't be here talking to you tonight, because the people were taken on trucks, went straight to the gas chamber. So I ran back to the other side, and I went to Auschwitz, and I got a shower, and I came out of the shower, I got a tattoo. I got a number here, 142584. From that moment on, you had no name anymore. That was your name. So I got a tattoo, and there's Auschwitz II called Birkenau. I went to Birkenau. In Birkenau, that was the worst camp I was in. I saw in Birkenau people running to the electric fence to get electrocuted. I saw people being beaten to death because they gave up. And I saw Dr. Mengele 2 more times in Birkenau, but it was daytime, and I was far away from where he was. So I got through her. And that was a time, and the Warsaw ghetto was the uprising of the Warsaw ghetto. After the Warsaw ghetto uprising, they said they need a big transport, but they didn't want to take any people from Poland. They only wanted people from Hungary, Greece, Italy. But on the end, they were short about 300 people. So they said, now we'll take some people from Poland. So I reported, and I was going back to the Warsaw ghetto for the second time. So I came back to the ghetto. There wasn't one house left. All the houses were burned up. There were remaining walls, and our job was to take down those remaining walls brick by brick and clean them up and put them up in stacks about 8 to 10 feet high. And there was no camp. They gave us some prefab. We had to put together our camp. And so there was no facility of anything. Then the typhus broke out. Anybody report to the hospital? I never knew anybody who came out to the hospital. Typhus is where you get high fever, very high temperature. I got the high fever, but I didn't report to the hospital because I had we called a couple, like a foreman. He was a middleweight German man, but he was also a prisoner. So he didn't care if we worked or didn't work. When I got it, I was sitting behind those stacks of bricks like this for about 3 days until I got over the temperature and went back to work. So I worked for a while. Then the Polish underground attacked our camp one night, trying to free us. So they were fighting all night, but were unsuccessful. So the next morning, they closed the camp. They took us out. And to get out of the city, we had to jog to get out because they said they were afraid that the underground may attack us in the city. So we got out of town, and they put us up on a big field where the farmers graze their cows, and the ground is very moist. So they put us up on the field, whatever means you have, a knife, a spoon, anything you could dig up some mud. And you took the bottom of your shirt and you squeezed the mud to get a little water. So we got a little water, and the next morning we're walking, and we come to the city. It was a river. So they let us go to the river to get some water. 2 of our people went a little further into the river. They thought maybe they want to escape, get out of the other side. They were killed. They were shot right in the river. So we got some water, and we were walking, and we come to the next city. It was the same river. So they said this time only 100 people at a time can go to the river to get some water. So I went, we got some water, and that day was a very heavy rain was coming down. You were soaking wet, you could hardly walk, until we arrived at the railroad station, and the same train arrived, and that time I was on the train for 3.5 days. No food, no water, no facilities. We were going to Germany. Came to Germany, the camp named Dachau. Dachau was the first camp Hitler built in 1933 for political prisoners. Then he turned it into a to a concentration camp with the gas chambers. So I went to Dachau, so for about 2 weeks I didn't do anything because they were established in 12 camps, all by number, from 1 to 12, within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding of Dachau. So I was sent to camp number 1, and I was working for a farmer digging potatoes. That lasted about 3 weeks. Then I moved to a camp about 50 kilometers from Dachau to a city of Landsberg am Lech, which was camp number 7. Camp number 7 was a small camp. We were only about 250 people. But we were a small group. We were in the camps over 4 years already. So we had the privilege of getting the better jobs. So friends of mine got some jobs working in the kitchen. And 2 of our friends, one was a carpenter and one was a metalsmith. And that was the only camp of women who were in the same camp, but they were blocked off one by wire fence, one corner of the camp, but we went to work together. So I got a group, we were 5 girls and 5 boys, to work in the kitchen for the German guards outside the camp. So I worked there in the kitchen. There were 2 German men in charge of the kitchen, but they were very good to me. Every day I went back to, after work, I went back to the camp. I took some food back for my friends, and we always had some soup left over. So we had some big milk cans. I took a milk can and put it in. The next morning, people were going to work. They had to pass by our kitchen. So I stopped them, and I gave them some food. A couple of times, the officer in charge of the guards complained, I'm holding up the people who are going to work. But my people told me, said, don't worry about it, let them talk, do what you're doing. And that lasted about 5 or 6 weeks. And actually to April 28, 1945, all the 12 camps had to go back to Dachau. So I went back to Dachau and stayed overnight on a big field. And the next morning, we're going what they called on a dead march. They're supposed to take us into the mountains in Germany. There's a ski resort named Garmisch, and they're supposed to kill us in the mountain. But we walked about 2 days, and we knew we're not going to be walking too far, because we could hear the fighting. So we knew that the American troops are not far behind us, and the planes were coming bombing the city. So we went for 2 days, and we crossed a little bridge, and the little bridge was blown up. So our group was divided in 2 halves. I was in a half where we were in a village named Königsdorf, and there was a little forest in the village. So they took us into the forest, and they asked for volunteers to take the sick people to take into the village and put them into the farm, to the barn. One of the volunteers was a friend of mine. So on the way back, they found a dead horse in the snow. So they cut up some pieces from the horse. And a friend of mine, that was him here. His name was Joe Buddha, was his name. He came back with a piece of horse meat and do something. So I made a fire and it was barbecue. It was the best meal we had in a long time. And during the night, the guards disappeared. So the next morning, the German police came and they took us into the village. It was in the morning, about between 8, 9 o'clock, and they disappeared. So we just walked around the village to see what's going to happen next. So I walked around between about 12 and 1 o'clock. An American tank moved in, and we were liberated. And behind the tank were the American troops. Behind the tank were the American troops that tried to block off the village, not to let anybody out. But we were a group, we were 9 of us. We were in the camps over 5 years. We didn't want to get blocked in. So we broke through and started to walk to see where the next town is. So we walked for about 1 or 2 kilometers, and we came to a German bakery. So we got into the bakery, and everybody got a bread. You were okay. And we kept walking, and we came to a city named Bad Tell. It's about 40 kilometers from Munich. And we see 3 American soldiers walking. They were trying to walk. They were holding on to each other. They were Czechoslovakian descent, but they were holding on to each other. They were so drunk they couldn't walk. But the clothes, I guess we were wearing, and they asked us, are you Polish? Told them yes. So they said, come on. And they took us into an underground bunker. It was a warehouse. You couldn't see the end of it. It was so big. So the first thing, we changed clothes. And everybody took a backpack, put some food in. And then there was a big row of bicycles chained up. They broke the chain, and everybody got a bicycle. But when the American troops came behind the tank, they brought all the people to that city. It used to be a German Air Force base, and they made a DP camp, a displaced person camp. But we didn't want to go to the camp yet. So we were trying to get out. We couldn't, because it was after 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock was curfew. So we hopped over about 3 or 4 fences, and we came to a German inn. It was taken over by the American troops, and in back of the inn was an empty house, so we took over the house. So we lived in the house about 10 days. Then they came out and ordered anybody who lives outside the camp have to move into the camp. So we moved into the camp, and we were taken back to another camp in Munich, but you were free. You wanted, you could live in the camp, or you can go any place you want. So I stayed in the camp about 3 days, and a few friends of mine and I decided to go back to the city of Landsberg, where camp number 7 was. And then at that time, there were a lot of DP camps already in Germany. Landsberg was one of the biggest. So I went to Landsberg to register, and they gave me a room, and I stayed overnight, and the next morning, I moved out 7 kilometers from town to a farm, and I lived in a farmhouse. And the reason we went to register to all the camps is in case of any of your family survived. So everybody went to look through the list. Because, you know, when I got out of the Warsaw ghetto, I left my parents, 2 sisters, and 1 brother in the Warsaw ghetto. Until today, I don't know what happened to them. So I went to register. So I moved out, moved to a farm. I lived in a farmhouse about 6 weeks, and I decided to go back to Poland, go to my hometown to see if any of my family survived, came back. So I went to my hometown, went to my house, and there were survivors living on the 2nd floor in our house. And the 1st floor were Polish people, but they said none of my immediate family came back. The only one who came back was a cousin of mine. He was 2 years younger than I, and I was with him and 2 of his uncles, his father's brother, when we came to Auschwitz. When Dr. Menger told me to go to the left, that's when I was separated from them. He's the cousin survived, the uncles didn't survive. That was here. on this end here, we had the same last name. His name was Mark Alexander. So he survived, but he lived in a different town. And that was very bad for survivors who came back, because they killed a lot of survivors, because when they took the Jews out of the homes, Polish people moved in, and now some of the survivors came back. They didn't want to give up the homes, so they killed a lot of survivors. In one town named Kielce, they killed 42 survivors. So the Polish people in my house, that lived in my house, asked me if I'm going to stay, they'll move out. I said, don't bother. I just went and picked up my cousin where he was, and we went back to Germany. And I lived in Germany for 4 more years. I couldn't go any place. I didn't have a passport. So I had to wait until some country opens up, try to take us in. So after 4 years, Canada said they'll take some people. So they went and registered, then you have to wait until they call you. Took a long time. You didn't hear from them. So then a friend of mine lived in the next village came and said, you can go to Munich. You can register to go to America. So I went to Munich and registered. It only took about 2 weeks, a very short time. I get a notice to go get checked out by the American doctor, and then the FBI to check you out. And then I got a note to go to Bremenhaven, that's a port in Germany where the boat was, to come to America. So I got on the boat, and I arrived in New York on May 30th, 1949. So I came to New York, everybody had to have a sponsor. Either had some relatives here or an organization, Jewish organization. I didn't have any relatives, so I was sponsored by a Jewish organization named Joint. And my contract was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I went to Harrisburg, and I got a job as a tailor, working for a man who had a cleaning store and tuxedo rentals. Man's name was Max Kaplan. A father couldn't be better than this man was to me. And then I came, and then my cousin who survived, he came later, and he came, had an uncle here in Santa Monica. So when he came to Santa Monica and told the uncle that I'm in Pennsylvania, and we were the only 2 survivors from our families. So the uncle called me a few times, I should come here so we can be together. So in 1950, I came to California. And before that, I was in 3 camps. I watched people being hung, people trying to escape, and they got cut. And on Sunday, we had to gather around watching being hung. I saw 3 of the hangings. So here, I came to California, and now here I am.
We're going to get through a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. With so much loss and death around you, how did you hold on to your hope through the 12 concentration camps?
Well, I tried to hope. I wanted to survive. I was determined to survive. I've talked to hundreds of thousands, I think, high school, middle school, and high school students. A lot of times, the students ask me, because I tell them I saw people in Birkenau going to the electric fence to get electrocuted, or people beaten to death. They ask, did you ever think of giving up? I said, no, I never did. I never lost faith. I never stopped believing in God. And I said, I may have a bad day today, but I hope tomorrow will be a better day, but never give up. That's what I
The Jewish community throughout history has always been a barometer of a society's consciousness, and we talked about this a little bit before. We're always the yellow light before it gets to red. If you could tell us one thing that you want us to take away today, what would that be to prevent history from repeating itself?
Well, 6 million Jews were murdered, 1.5 million children. They were murdered not because they were criminals or did anything wrong, just because they were Jews. And today we have a lot of anti-Semitism going on, and we have some Holocaust deniers. When I talk to the high school students, I tell them, you may listen to some Holocaust deniers or the anti-Semites. Don't listen to them. I call the Holocaust deniers, they're crazy. Because I go back there to the camps today, Auschwitz, Dachau, Treblinka, Majdanek. You see every day buses with people coming from all over the world, witnessing the gas chambers in the oven that's still in existence today. So that's why I call them, don't listen, they're crazy. Don't listen to them. So it's the only way today you can stop it today, is through education. Because I was told 70% the high school students I talked to never heard about the Holocaust. So that's the few survivors left. That's what our job is, to let them know what happened. And sometimes, most of the time, a lot of them tell me, they read some books about the Holocaust, but it's not the same as listening to somebody who survived. So that's our job today. That's what we're doing. So now, if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer you. There's some right.
I want to tell you, to have Joe here is not so simple, because we've been trying every year to find another survivor, and they're dwindling. And most survivors, there aren't very few in Nashville, and they live little pockets of the country, and they're all older. They don't want to come. They say, we're old, it's hard. Here's a 101-year-old man that traveled 2,000 miles to come here because he wants you to hear.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thanks everybody for coming.
He wants you to hear from him. Look at him. He's 101. We say in Judaism, live to 120. For Joe, it's 180. How far he can get. Do you know that I took a picture yesterday of his driver's license? He's still driving. Yes. Look at him, because there aren't many left. We're all young. There's a lot in this world. This is a living testimony. If anyone ever says anything, say, I heard it from the man that saw it. We're going to open it up to questions. I'll walk around with the mic. If anybody has a question, just come up here a little bit, come closer.
Rabbi.
Yes.
There was somebody over there.
Go ahead. This is the future. Tell us your name. These are the type of people that need to hear the story. What is your name?
My name's Gabby, and I just wanted to ask him what was his parents' name?
What was the name of your parents?
The
The name of your parents.
of my parents?
Yes.
My mother's name was Hannah, and my father's name was David.
So Hannah and David, two beautiful biblical names. And his he calls him Joe, but his Jewish name is Judah, like Judah the Maccabee. That's a very good question. Thank you so much. Yes.
My name is Sarah Berman. Thank you for being here. Thank you for surviving. I don't want to cry. I would like to know how you felt after you came to America, ended up in California. How did you deal with what happened to you? Were you filled with rage? Were you filled with hate? Were you just filled with positive I'm moving forward. What was that like?
Emotionally, how did you handle the Holocaust when you were liberated? Did you feel truly liberated when you were here? Is that in a moment?
And after, I mean, is there a rage? Is there an internal rage? Is there an internal rage?
When I was liberated in a country not that I grew up in. And had no family. I was 21 when I was liberated. So, only thing I could do is try to start a new life. And that's what I did. I lived 4 years in Germany, and I was doing very good in Germany until I came to the United States and I started a new life in the United States. I got married, I had 2 kids, and I have a grandson. So that's what happened. And now I have a nice girlfriend. She's right here. Her name is Riva.
Okay, so I have a little bit of what we call Jewish geography. My father was also a survivor of Auschwitz, and he grew up in a town called Moava. So that should be Moava. Does this sound familiar?
No.
It was about 2 hours from Kowal. But
No, there's a Koval and there's a Kovel. Kovel is near the Russian border.
oh, so you were near the Russian border?
Yeah. I am a Koval, it was Central Pole, closer to Lodz.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted to thank you. My father also gave testimony. When did you start and what prompted you to finally talk about your experience?
Well, I started actually in the 1997. That was the first time I had a friend in Culver City who belonged to a club which is mixed Jews and Gentiles. And they met every Tuesday for lunch. So one day he said to me, Gary, he said, Joe, come with me for lunch. So I went with him to lunch, and then I was there, we had lunch, and then he said, why don't you tell the people what you went through? So that was the first time I spoke. And I had a Israeli woman who's teaching Holocaust in a synagogue called Bet Am in Los Angeles. And then she said, Cole, why don't you come and talk to my kids? She was teaching 8th graders about the Holocaust. So I kept talking for a while to her. And one day I got a phone call from a man. He was a member of Los Angeles Holocaust Museum, called the Holocaust Museum Los Angeles. He was a member of the board of the Holocaust. He heard about me talking, so he says, why don't you come and talk at the museum? So I started about 5 years ago, and I'm still talking at the museum.
Thank you so much. My name's Len Beccarrier. I am the son of 2 Auschwitz survivors, neither of whom ever wanted to share any of the detail that they experienced. They didn't want to relive it, and they didn't want their children to have to understand it in any meaningful way. So I am very grateful for you sharing this and helping us understand of what happened. My mother was from Lodz, just down the road, as I understand. My father was from Lava, were the prior. So everything you said strikes very hard and very deeply, and we are grateful for your efforts. This needs to be remembered. This needs to be thought of. And in this current world, we are very, very at a loss for folks like you who are continuing to remind us of the evils of the past so that we need not repeat them. Thank you.
We have enough for 2 more questions, so.
Joe, thanks so much for coming.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you held on to your religious faith. Why do you think you did and maybe some other people didn't? Or what helped you keep your faith in God?
Because I grew up in a religious family. My parents, my family, we were called modern Orthodox. So that's how I grew up.
Thank you.
Do you have a question? What is your name?
Are you still in contact with anyone who was also a survivor?
Unfortunately, not anymore. I was, but there's nobody I know who is still around. I was in contact with quite a few of them, but they're all gone.
Okay.
Here, like for instance, there's 2 of them actually. Here, as you can see, this was my cousin. He was a survivor. He's gone. This man here brought the horse meat. He is gone. So everybody I knew of. Here's a couple. Another couple here I have. I don't know if you can see it there. We were friends for 73 years. I met him in Auschwitz, and then I met her. We were in the camps together. That's where he met his wife, and after the war they were married, and we came to the United States. I was in Harrisburg, and they were in Detroit. And then I came to Los Angeles. They moved to Los Angeles. But we were friends for 73 years. They passed away about 5 years ago. Both of them passed in 1 week. He died on a Monday, and she died on Thursday. But we were friends for 73 years. Name was Seltzer. Etto and Sam Seltzer.
Hi, I'm Bina. I'm a Jewish woman and I work for the Tennessee Holocaust Commission as their researcher. My question is that my job is directly along with educating youth and doing the research for people. What do you, as a Holocaust survivor, think that researchers and people who are actively working should be focusing on in order to help teach the future generations?
I didn't get it too good because it was too. Move away, you're too close to the mic. I think that's what it is.
What do educators and teachers need to be focusing on for Holocaust education for the younger generation?
What for Holocaust education, did you say? Well, that's for Holocaust education, go visit Holocaust Museum. And because they bring in, like the museum I belong to, is they bring in almost daily high school students on buses. They pay for the buses to bring in to hear Holocaust survivors talk. So that's the only way we can stop is through education. That's what we're doing the best we can.
Joe, we had dinner last night. We were talking about, can you tell everyone the secret, how you made it to 101, to outlive all of your friends? What is that secret recipe to be a happy man like you and just go about driving and living life every day at 101 years old?
Just keep busy. Just keep busy. That's what I do. I get phone calls from all over globally to speak, from all over, almost daily. I spoke to a few months ago to a group in Scotland on Zoom. I spoke to a lady in Ireland. She has a TV show in Ireland. Reva and I were in 2015, we were invited by the German government to come back to celebrate 70 years the liberation of Dachau. And I met, if you could see who this is. Can you see it? And I spoke to her in Dachau in 2015. I spoke to her in Dachau. Now, last year, I was back again in Dachau. Last May, I went back to celebrate 78 years the liberation of Dachau. And then in 2015, after I went to Dachau to celebrate the liberation, we went to Italy. I wanted to go to Italy, so I went to Italy. I spoke in Rome to a Jewish school in Rome, in Italy. And then I went to Florence, and I talked in Florence to a Chabad. So I say, I speak all over, everywhere.
That's Joe's secret. He doesn't stop traveling at 101 years old. Yes.
So that's the secret. Just keep busy.
And Joe, you also told me you never keep a grudge. We spoke about that last night.
No, I don't keep a grudge, because you keep a grudge, it makes yourself sick, and it doesn't help anything.
Yes.
So I don't carry a grudge.
My friends, before I pass the microphone back to Alyssa, I just want to tell you, I had dinner last night with Riva and Joe, and we were talking about what should people take home. You came, you're inspired. What's tomorrow? And really, we have over 350 people here, many more watching on Zoom, and we just ask you each to be ambassadors of light, to go around, not only to tell Joe's story, but there's so much darkness, and it's a little bit light that pushes away this darkness. And if we can each inspire another person and another person, we can spread the truth and make this world a brighter place, and this world needs a lot of light. So Joe might be the generator, but we are the representatives, the ambassadors of light. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, we all have an image of God within us. We're all created in the image, B'Tselem Elokim. God said, Adam and Eve, I will create an image of the Lord within you. So we need to go and share this story, inspire others. And God bless Joe with a long life that he can go around, keep on telling the story until we merit the ultimate life. So,
I also speak to Jewish, to Gentiles, to Gentile synagogue. No, I speak to Gentiles, churches. I spoke to Gentile churches too. Yeah.
Rabbi, I want to thank Chabad Nashville for putting on this evening and for us to join in community. I also want to thank Regions Bank for making this come.
Well, here is a man right here. I spoke to him on Zoom.
And a round of applause for Joe Alexander.
The chair of the Tennessee Holocaust Commission, Mr. Ken Gluck, is here, and he tried to bring Joe a while back, and Joe had some health complications, so we did a Zoom before. So this, in a way, is a beautiful thing that Joe was here to meet Ken, because Joe already did online opportunities for teaching and education with people in the state. And we hope, Joe, you should live many more years, but I think of such a turnout tonight, and we had to turn so many people away. As I'm standing here, I'm thinking we're going to bring you back and get 10 times as many people, 3,000 people, to come and hear you, because yes. Thank you again, and I just want to make it, I know Alyssa mentioned it, I want to thank Regions Bank that this is their 6th year of making these events possible. Mr. LeBlanc that couldn't be here. So we have good friends in the community. Thank you all for coming, and I know there's over 350 about in this room. If you want to come up and shake his hand, you're welcome to, and take a picture, you're welcome to, but let's do it in a way that we're not overwhelming Joe, and I want to thank Alyssa for stepping up to the plate for cheering this event.
Thank you all for coming, and we wish you a really good night.
Sure.